Hello everyone. This week we are reviewing a book titled A World Without Work by Daniel Susskind. This week is an interesting week in the sense that there was a fellow book reader who wanted to do some kind of a conversation in the book review, and both of us agreed to do that with this book. And we have done that already, and I'll share that link once that is ready and out. But I couldn't stop my routine activity of updating the reviews, and hence I am providing whatever I think is a summary of a book through this video. The book is about how technology and automation might leave the world with less work or no work at all, and what would happen to our labor and people who are already employed today. And it also tries to alleviate any concerns that one would have and what one should do in order to survive this situation. The book starts off with a very simple example of what happened in the 80s before the Industrial Revolution came into picture, and when horses roamed the streets of New York. Nobody would have expected that there would be a situation where the horses would go out of vogue and the transportation would be done by machines. There was at one point a situation where the amount of manure that was generated out of all the horse was so much that the corporation of New York could not handle it. And today we don't see even a single horse in the city of New York unless for recreational purposes. So that is the kind of thing that might happen to the humans as well when the technology moves in the direction towards automation, etc. He starts off with a very simple definition of a word coined by Maynard Keynes in 1930, a famous economist, called as technological unemployment. Unemployment brought due to improvement in technology. He coined this in 1930, and he said the next 100 years people would bring down the amount of work that they would do in a week, and there will be a lot of leisure time left with people. He in fact called this an era of leisure. But that has not happened actually, right? We are in 2020, which is 90 years away from when he predicted that. It has not happened as is, but the trend towards that is already on way. We can very clearly see that the amount of work that we spend has come down significantly owing to automation / productivity improvements, and it is going to happen at some point. We don't know when. And this is not going to happen over time. Whatever this prediction is being done, it's not going to be a big bang happening overnight. It's going to be a gradual change. Sometimes we may not even know that it is happening. Only when it hits it we would know that it has already happened, right? Now the basic question that one would ask is this fear misplaced, right? There has been industrial revolution, there has been revolution in terms of we moving from an agricultural economy to a manufacturing economy and a services kind of an economy, etc. But the job losses have not happened as much they should have been with the kind of prediction that we had in that era, but it has not happened. There are a variety of reasons why the author talks about why this has not happened at the pace. One of the simple reasons is that when automation happens, it replaces a set of people. At the same time, it also creates more jobs, right, in terms of people having more spending power, and hence different kinds of businesses coming into vogue, and hence the economy moving. So he classifies all of this into three buckets. He calls it improvement via productivity, and the bigger pie, and the changing pie. Meaning productivity improves, hence people get more spare time to do work, and hence their efficiency improves, and hence the wage improves, and hence there is more spending power. With that, the size of the economy automatically improves. It does not mean that with more money coming into people's hands, their wants and needs changes, and hence the pie also automatically changes. So for example, if you see, the USA at one point was an agrarian economy, right? Today it is a services economy. It has moved from one corner of the spectrum to the other corner, and the pie has drastically changed. Because of all of these things, one would have think that job losses may not happen at that pace with the automation coming in, because these new domains are being opened up. The only issue with respect to what is happening now vis-a-vis what happened earlier in the previous era is that the amount of complementing or additional jobs that are being generated because of automation is coming to dwindle down. Primary reason being that the level of intelligence that is being brought in is also taking over these new domains that are opening up as well. Hence, it's a big problem that we all should be worried about. Now, what is the biggest threat that this automation situation poses today? Is it just job losses? Should doctors, engineers, or everybody be worried? That is not the situation actually. Why? Because if you see post the 1980s, when a major technological shift happened, if you see, there has been a change in the distribution of workforce between low skilled, middle skilled and high skilled people. The low skilled people have increased in shares. Similarly, high skilled people have increased in share. It is the middle skilled people where the biggest problem has come in, and that is primarily because if you see, automation generally attacks routine or mundane tasks. It does not attack the job primarily, it attacks these routine tasks, right? And hence, it is the middle skilled people who generally do such kind of work. The low skilled people are where you would have a gardener or a housekeeping person, etc., who would need to interact with people, right? And you can't replace that. Similarly, the high skilled people are more about cognitive skills, decision making, rallying around people, managerial, etc., right? Those can't be automated again. It is the middle skilled people where the automation might come into picture. So it is more about task automation as much as the job automation, and hence the problem is the hollowing happens in the middle area only. Now, the other big thing that is coming our way is that can the change in the pattern of jobs required not help us now also? Why not, right? The productivity or the changing pie or the bigger pie that we spoke about, how is it a problem today, right? It can happen tomorrow also, right? But what is the issue? The issue is that there could be possibilities that the people that are equipped today may not be employable in the future with the kind of jobs that are opening up. That's a possible situation. Or people might feel that it is kind of a change, or they wouldn't want to do that, right? It's an identity issue. People who are highly qualified wouldn't want to do something which is a little more a lower level kind of a job, or people wouldn't want to relocate across the globe to do some kind of work like that. So there are very good possibilities that even though new kinds of jobs are opening up, we may not have people who are keen to pick it up, right? And this kind of unemployment, he calls it as a frictional unemployment vis-a-vis a structural unemployment. Structural unemployment is basically wherein the jobs are actually basically gone down. There are no jobs created. Now, when there are two different kinds that he talks about, right? And we shouldn't be worried much about the structural unemployment, because if it happens, it happens, right? You can't do much about it. The area where we should concentrate as humans are the frictional unemployment, wherein jobs are created, but we don't have the necessary workforce to take over all those jobs. How do we make people equipped to all of this is the big question. Now, all of these problem statements are there. The author quickly jumps on to understanding when something like this happens, the wealth is going to get accumulated with a certain set of people, right? People who own big tech companies, it is going to get accumulated towards those people. Now, how do we ensure that the wealth gets distributed evenly across the population so that there is no unrest in the world, and hence this is where the role of the state or the ruling party, whichsoever is in that country, takes over the distribution of wealth here. Even today it happens, right? People tax the wealthy more, and that is being distributed as welfare or welfare opportunities or loans that are being distributed. Now, it can happen tomorrow also, but the big problem is that today a lot of people are working, right? And hence taxation hits most of them almost very similarly or a little differently. and people don't feel very bad about it. But tomorrow, when people have lost jobs, a certain section of portion of the population has lost job, and you're going to levy tax on one set of people to pay for the rest of the population, there's going to be unrest from here as well as disappointment from the other side, wherein people might feel that they are not contributing enough to the welfare of the economy, but just eating on the benefits of the economy. Now, this is where the author talks about ensuring certain conditions are being put in to say that people who are going to participate in such kind of a system wherein a certain portion is being doled out on a monthly basis to these people who have lost jobs, help the economy in certain non-economic activities like taking care of the elderly or tutoring children, taking care of schools, etc., and hence ensure that they don't feel bad about missing out on the whole economic boom that is happening. Now, this is on the portion where there is a certain threat that has happened, and how does the big state or the country respond to that threat. Now, how do we as individuals respond to this is also very, very important. One of the biggest call outs that the author makes here is how the education system in particular. Today, if you see, there's a certain mode of academia that we follow, pedagogy that follow. He says that there has to change significantly. One of the biggest call outs that he makes is the arithmetic that we teach to students today or teach children today is not going to help us tomorrow, because there are going to be machines who will do all the arithmetic or math that is required, or rote learning or memorizing of facts. Hence, a lot of time has to be spent on decision making / problem solving, and hence our teaching methodologies have to change. And as people who are part of the workforce, we also have to keep learning and relearning and unlearning and ensure that we are relevant in the future course. The author also at the end of the book, towards the end of the book, he gets into a little philosophical discussion around we have discussed about the economic impact of we losing our jobs / work, but there is also this case where work is a critical part of our lifestyle today. We spend at least 8 to 14 hours out of 24 hours in the workplace. Now, when somebody takes that away from you, how are we going to react to that? While we will be very keen on or happy about a situation where we have a lot of leisure time, but you can't live with that for long. You would get bored after some time. Now, how do we handle that situation? How do we ensure that the entire population is engaged in this leisure time so that we don't get into any kind of behavior that is not suited for the welfare of the society, right? So these are some questions that he poses. And finally, before he closes off the book, he talks about these big tech companies. While we can take care of the economic portion of it by taxing them, etc., and ensure that the distribution of wealth is evenly taken care of, how are we going to handle their political clout? When they become really big, they are going to work with the policymakers and the competition commissions, etc., and ensure that they have the odds stacked in favor of them. So it is very, very important that we as the people of this world take the right decisions in both these directions, right? In our individual lifestyle as well as the policy making and decision making, and ensure that the automation / AI wave that is hitting us today is taken in the right spirit, and it is helping us in improving the overall pie that we have been talking about. It just ensures that the pie improves and it gets distributed to everybody evenly, from the state side as well as from our individual efforts as well. With that, we come to the key takeaways from this book. The first takeaway for me is that the education system that we have been talking about has to change drastically. I'm not sure when our schooling system has to change to meet the needs of this AI wave that we are talking about. It is going to take a very long time before the bureaucracy machine changes direction. So it is in the hands of the parents and the younger generation to understand this and do the needful so that they become employable in the future. That's a big takeaway for me. The second one is with respect to our understanding of the artificial intelligence domain in itself. The general public has to spend a lot more time in understanding how these tech companies are navigating this puzzle and be on top of these things. That while it might sound alarming that companies could build a machine which is which thinks for itself, etc., but while it is not so far away, it does not mean that the public may not be kept alert of what is happening in these domain. It is very, very important the layman also understands where this is going towards, because there could be a situation tomorrow where the machines rule make a lot of decisions for us and impact the last person in the population. And the third key takeaway for me is that the current population which is there, the concept of frictional unemployment, right, wherein there is a certain labor workforce which is there, and the domains are opening up, fresh domains are opening up. How do we as this workforce, part of this workforce, become employable to that? We'll have to keep learning newer technologies and better technologies and make ourselves employable in the face of these new domains that are opening up as well. That's very critical. With that, we come to the end of this week's summary and review. I'll catch up with you with another interesting book the next week. Goodbye.